Hello, and welcome to your Strength Coach podcast, episode 64, Trapbars and Safety Bars. Hello, and welcome to episode 64 of the Strength Coach podcast. I'm Mark. Today is Monday, the 11th of January 2016. Today's question and topic comes from episode 63 in the comment section on YouTube. Comes from PL700. He asks, I'll have the opportunity to use a safety squat bar and trap bar in my gym. What do you think of these types of bars? And also, the same lines, value of banded work. I think I'll address banded work in another episode probably this week. It's probably a bit more of an involved topic. There is definitely merit to band work, but I think you need to be selective in where you use it and how you use it. And I'll go through, from my point of view anyway, where it fits into a program. As regards trap bars and safety bars, I think it depends on what you're training for. If you're training for powerlifting, then the trap bar is of very limited value. All really a trap bar does is it pretty much puts you in a quarter squat position, or it has the same sort of joint angles as a quarter squat, except it's a bit kinder on the back because there isn't any direct compression. All of the compression is coming from it's holding in your hands, which should place lighter or less axial force. Axial should put less shearing forces on the spine. Because if you can't hold a good position, like you can't hold your hips close to the bar vertically in space, and as soon as you start leaning away or you get forward leaning the squat, then you're trapped with that you're trapped with that a lot of shearing forces going through L5, because that's the fulcrum of the movement now all of a sudden. Whereas in a trap bar, your hips are free to change the point of pivot. So, for example, if you were to pick your hands were outside of your center of support, or they were outside of your feet, and you were to pick the trap bar up with a rounded spine, it's quite easy to push your hips forward so that they're now in line with your feet, which means you have a lot lesser horizontal displacement. If you were to video side on or on the sagittal plane, you'd have a much smaller horizontal footprint, which in essence means you have a much smaller shearing force, which makes it a lot easier on the lower back. It's quite a good movement for people who want to train for sport. So if you're an amateur football player, an amateur rugby player, any kind of amateur athlete, and you do some kind of lower body strength work, but find that squat either hurts your back, find it technically quite difficult, find that the flexibility is quite difficult to achieve, which can be the case in a lot of sports, especially like athletics, jumping, sprinting, because one of triathletes as well, because a lot of the adaptations that make them good at their sport is actually just being stiff, having stiff tendons, stiff muscular tendons, junctions, just generally being able to be quite elastic and return force into the floor quite easily, or using gravity to use. Basically, they're quite good. The reactive strike's quite good. They're quite good at, for example, for a triathlete running, they're quite efficient in holding their gait, holding the same speed, returning force into the floor, or returning their elastic energy potential. Or I'm saying a lot of big words, not really having a lot of meaning here. Basically, they're efficient in what they do, which doesn't require big joint angles. It requires small joint angles. So for them, going into a full squat, or even going into deadlift, which has quite a large bend at the hip, whereas strap bar deadlift has quite a shallow bend at the hip, or definitely a more shallow bend than in the deadlift, and a very shallow bend at the knee. It's quite easy for them to utilize that movement without a lot of training or a lot of fatigue or a lot of input. So basically, it's a pretty easygoing lower body strength tool that you can use for someone who's training for strength training is supplementary to their primary goal. But for a powerlifter who your primary goal is deadlift, squat, almost completely useless. The joint angles are too small to have any carryover to the main lifts. The primary actor is the quadriceps, which isn't really is the primary mover in the squat. When you get past a certain joint angle in the movement, it's probably quite useful for a strongman, perhaps. So if you train strongman, it's quite a useful tool. For example, if you're in a commercial gym, they have a trap bar deadlift. Probably highly unlikely the commercial gym has a trap bar deadlift, but if they do, then you can train for things like farmer walk pickups or frame deadlift, because it's a similar sort of side handle pickup, which will make it applicable to different events in strongman. But as far as the carry over to squat and deadlift, is probably minimal, if nothing at all. For safety squat bar is a fantastic bit of kit, and use it quite a lot with players with shoulder injuries, wrist injuries, any kind of upper limb injury. So as a powerlifter, for example, if you find that you get a lot of elbow tendonitis from bench, traditional bar squat, you can get a lot of great work in using the safety bar squat. Very useful tool, especially when you're compromised. So by compromise, if you have a shoulder niggle, elbow niggle, wrist niggle, anything like that, where you can't hold the barbell in a traditional sort of back squat position, it is a very, very useful tool. Definitely something to have about. For a fit lifter, I think it's a really good kind of off-season lift, or as a good supplementary lift. It makes holding or bracing your upper back a lot more difficult. So if you find that's something that you maybe toil with a bit, so you find that you cave in the upper back quite a lot, or maybe you find that you want to get better at that, training with the safety squat bar could be a good way of being more acutely aware of the effects, things like bombing down into the bottom, not extending properly, not having a proper rhythm, bouncing into the bottom without coordination, the kind of the knock-on effect these kind of things would have on a straight bar, you can maybe disguise or get away with. But if you try dive bomb down with a safety squat bar, you're gonna regret it, because what's going to happen is you're gonna go down and hit the bottom, you're gonna drive into the bar, but then you're not gonna get a clean drive up. Or if your torso caves, so your thoracic spine caves, the safety squat bar is going to wobble, and that wobble is really going to show you or emphasize that kind of leakage, or that force leakage in your technique. So it's going to teach you to have a more controlled descent. It's going to teach you to brace more with the upper back. It's going to show you how to squat with a more efficient technique, especially on the way down. And it's also going to teach you how to try to time your drive up, so that the force doesn't go forward, you don't buckle forward. Basically teaches you to transfer force up the way a bit better, which is something that the bands can help with a lot, which we'll cover in the next episode. Yeah, so safety squat bar is an immensely useful tool. And it does have direct carryover into a back squat, because it is a back squat with a different tool. So it is a very useful tool. So yeah, definitely would think about supplementing with the safety squat bar. Certainly if you're haven't got a competition coming up in the next 12 weeks, say, or you want to work on something different, or you want to make training a wee bit more interesting, then do a 4-week cycle with the safety squat bar. You can just repeat whatever you would normally do for a normal bar. So if you would do 5 sets of 5, week 1, 5 4s week 2, 5 3s week 3, 4 6s on the deload. Cycle that, drag out quite a lot, 'cause it's quite good. Then just do it with the safety squat bar. So if you're doing 5-3-1 rather than doing 5-3-1 with the straight bar, do 5-3-1 with the safety squat bar. Doesn't really matter what program you're doing. Just replace back squat with safety squat bar for a period of 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. And if you're not used to using safety squat bar, you're almost certainly going to get some kind of transfer at the back end. Especially if you're not a massively competent lifter. And I say massively competent, I mean you've been training for like 10, 15 years. You have a Wilks total in the high 400s, low 500s. Right, you're well balanced and good lifter. That kind of where you're specialised in that route, it can depend. Like you can't get carryover from it in that position. You're just a lot less likely to get carryover from anything in that position because you're very well trained by that stage, and it's difficult to get adaptation. But if you're kind of an intermediate lifter, you've been lifting for a year, 2 years, 3 years, you're like a 300-ish Wilks totaler, then it's probably quite a useful tool to get, and you probably get quite a lot of transfer out of it. And so hopefully that's answered your question. That concludes this episode. Any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you have any questions you don't want to see in public, shoot us an email, speedpowerperformance@gmail.com. castironstrength.com is a website. onlinestrengthcoach.com is the other website in creation. Has been in creation for the last 7 fucking months. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. And I'll leave you with some DJ EZ Classic UK Garage. Catch you later in the week.